Hi everyone. Before we get into the video, I just wanted to take a moment to explain what is happening here and how it came about. I did not set out to make a video that explored a commentary of the themes of the South Node at all. This actually was a video that was the Libra extended. As I do every month, I create an extended for every monthly video for each of the signs, as some of you will know. And largely those are viewed by people with, one of their big three in one of those signs. Very standard stuff. But I recorded this last week, and there was something about it that was different to the usual readings that I do. There was an immersive quality to it. It was extremely intense. And whilst that's not something that bothers me, I was kind of like, this is a bit weird. So I sat on it for most of the day. And then that evening I decided to do something that I don't usually do, which was go back and listen to the extended. They were, a few hours apart from it, so I could listen to it with a fresh brain and see if I could see what it was that was niggling at me about it. And as I was listening, I was struck with a thought, and that is that this extended really was a journey to the centre of the heart of the shadow of Libra. And because of that, there was a wider applicability to everybody else. There were other signs who could take something from this because of the shadow themes that it dealt with during the course of the reading. And hot on the trails of that thought, I was struck with another one. And that is that the South Node is in Libra. And suddenly this video took on a significance that I had not seen at the point that I was recording it. Because it seems to me over the course of the next 18 months that it is likely that we will all be called to deal with the themes that are brought up in this reading. We might all find ourselves on the threshold of a doorway to our own shadow. This leaning into the I am rather than the we are, bringing with it a certain amount of confrontational energy that is asking us to look at our own shadow. So to that end, with the permission of Libras who I've spoken to on Circle, this extended, which would usually be a paid for add-on, is going to be free for everyone, because I want as many people as possible to see this and see the process that is going along in the background, and at least have some awareness of it, so when it does come up in their own experience, it isn't as overwhelming and frightening as an experience as it could be. Literally read this morning in the book of a very wise man, like this is a massive subtraction ready, preparing you for a massive addition. And so where there will be bits of this that are speaking to a very specific situation with Libra over the month of August, take the macro view, step back a little bit from it, and see where these themes might be playing out for you. It's my hope that people will be able to come back to this reading in a year's time and see the broader scope of what was being discussed there. For some of you, you might want to contextualize it a little bit by going back and looking at the Libra reading full stop, the standard YouTube one that is released, that will be released here in August. And I'll put a link to it in the description box if any of you are interested in doing it. But it really is the extended that seems to hold the value for everyone. The dragon's tail is not going to be just affecting Libra, it's going to be affecting all of us. And there's a process of renewal here, and shadow work is absolutely essential to that. So, with all of that said, let's dive into it. Hi Libra, thanks for joining me over here. I have to say, I'm actually quite glad that I got to the end of the YouTube reading, because I have an unofficial rule that I don't smoke on the channel when I'm doing readings, but I'll come and have a cigarette with you. And here's the thing, it feels like a weird kind of intimacy because like it's a bit more relaxed here. So I feel then like I am allowed to smoke. It's okay. Because I need the cigarette to help me concentrate here, because like even in the reading I can feel myself kind of turning inward. Now like, obviously I'm talking to you, but I'm almost kind of not even, what's the best way to put this? It's like I'm talking and I'm aware that I'm talking, but the energy is so intently going inward here. That my voice even to me is starting to sound just like background noise in the process of going within. Like I said to you, that it felt intense, it felt challenging, and I think that those are two words that you will definitely be able to use to describe the energy of this next month. Because it's knocking on all sorts of bits of your psyche that have been, as we put it, with the bluebells on that card there, they've been undisturbed for a long time. This is a situation that has been glossed over, rugged over, if you will, over and over and over again for years. And there will be a reason for that. And I think the reason for it is the amount of intimacy that you feel like you are supposed to have in this situation, right? What you assumed that you had. So this isn't something that's happened suddenly. Like what I'm trying to describe here, and I really hope that I'm kind of getting it across here, is a process that's been built up over years. It might have even been built up over decades for some of you, right? And it's like every time there's a little bit of discomfort, there's something that feels like it's a little bit sharp under something, we throw another rug on it, or we put another cushion on it, or something like that, and we forget why it is that we put all of this stuff in here. We forget that it was because there was something edgy and uncomfortable underneath it. We maybe forget it's because we kept walking into the sharp edge of this and it fucking hurt every single time. Rather than going, I'm not going to walk near that anymore, or I'm going to put myself somewhere else where that edge isn't a problem for me, you just go, I'll just put some stuff over it, it'll be fine. And returning to this idea of foundations and what fundamentally has value to you, that's what I feel like you're questioning. Because there's been an assumption that whatever it is has had that fundamental value. And it doesn't feel to me like you're sure that that's the case anymore. Like, how far is this allowed to go before... Well, where's your line in the sand, Libra? Do you have one? Because that might be quite an interesting thing for you to be exploring. Like, particularly if there is this kind of low-level disrespect that you're so very used to receiving, like so much so that you don't even hear it anymore. What would it take to push you into a conscious reevaluating of these relationships? Is there anything that this person could do that would make you turn away from them? Because if there isn't, then there's a real question of boundaries here, Libra. But there's also a question of the value that you put on yourself. It's that kind of horrifying realization that we haven't done that. That's what I'm feeling here. Like I was talking about in YouTube reading, like how it felt like a pressure in my fucking abdominal cavity, a pressure in my chest. It's like, fuck. I don't know if you ever have those internal revelation moments where I do. In fact, I had some this week, in fact. Not about the nature, the kind of thing that you're talking about here, but like of a different sort. My shadows kind of jumped down my throat, and then just started, fucking squashing all of my internal organs together. It's all been very profound, and it's been deeply internal, and it's also been really, really simple when you come down to, when you boil all of things down to what they actually mean. I mean, we can pad them out and we can put beautiful fucking rugs and tapestries and all sorts of things over them, but the fact is we're covering something. We're covering something. And we've been doing it for so long that we've forgotten what that thing is. And for whatever reason, what has happened here is reminding you of that for the first time in a very long time. And whichever which way you come at this situation, everything boils down to this essential point, and that is you don't value yourself enough to have good boundaries for you that say, I'm not going to be in a place where I'm in a constant fucking battle with sharp edges. Because it's not my job. It's just not my job. My job is to look after me. And maybe you realise that by staying in this situation, you've done anything but. There are so many fucking examples that I feel kind of triggering around in my own past. Nothing to do with the stuff that's come up for me this week, but that same feeling, like, fuck. But because it's you, I think that you'll be worried that you're overthinking it. I think that you'll be worried that maybe you might be projecting something onto somebody else, and so you're going to want to test the veracity of this. It's insufficient to just come to a conclusion. Now you have to test your hypothesis. And this month is all about that, I think, for you. So, what we're going to do, when I've lit my cigarette again, what we're going to do is pull some cards and find out what exactly it is that you need to know about the month of August. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. Because I'm hoping what I do here is add a little bit of illumination to the lamp that you are already carrying. Because ultimately, you're the one who is going to need to come to a conclusion about this, and that's the right way. Like, you should never be giving your authority up to anybody else to make those kind of, to be able to test that for you, because you are the person who has the skills, knowledge and self-awareness to work out whether what you come up with at the end is true. So, what does Libra need to know, please? The truth. Are these things that are coming up here, are they true? It's not it really isn't about making yourself comfortable anymore. Nine of Cups. Eight of Pentacles in reverse. Fucking hell. What have we got down here? Let's have a look. Four of Wands. Page of Pentacles. Ten of Pentacles. Five of Wands in reverse. The Death card again, and the Four of Swords. The High Priestess. There's a process here, Libra, and one that starts with a hypothesis, and one that I think that you're going to be testing, like I said, right the way through August, and it ends with acceptance. Everything that happens in between those 2 points is where the pressure is. It's where the pressure in the chest, where the pressure in the abdominal cavity is, right? And it's not going to be released until this comes together. They sit together. So, let's see all of that. There we go. You notice that there's considerably fewer major arcana here. And I think that's because the big hits on you are what's already come out in the YouTube reading. Now it's about the process. Do you remember how I was talking about how the minor arcana are your responses, the things that you can do, the things that you do and the things that you can do about these big universal pressures and flexes and stresses on you, and how you reach them by virtue of the Hermit, right? We're testing all sorts of things here, and although on the face of it, it might be, just as simple on the surface as, is this relationship good for me, and am I getting anything from it? That might be your base premise for what's going on here. There's so much that's being swept up in terms of the way that you view yourself, your very fucking identity, the way that you manage your emotions, what it is that feels like a good relationship to you, and it's all getting kind of flipped upside down. It's all getting swirled around. Like things that felt like they were set, certainly with the way that you saw yourself, are now up for testing. This Chariot card at the bottom of the deck is very, very well placed, I think. Because if I had one card, if I had to pick one card that referred to shadow work out of the entire tarot, it would be the Chariot. Now, there are other cards that additionally can speak to that, right? In addition to the Chariot card, they would be the Moon, they would be the Hanged Man, they would be the Hermit. All these archetypes you've already seen. Additionally, we might include things like the Eight of Swords and the Nine of Swords and the Ten of Swords. But in the first instance, if I had to boil it down to one, it's this one here. And that is because the Chariot card is the card of the self. And And it deals in polarities. It deals with the parts of us that are very visible, right? They're they put it in the Matrix. You know when Morpheus takes Neo into the Matrix for the first time, and they're just in that big white space, and there's that whole conversation about what is normal. And Neo is standing there and he's like, I haven't got the thing in the back of my neck, like, but I'm not really here, like, what the fuck is going on, like, everything feels real. And Morpheus says, like, this is residual self-image, this is what you think you look like. And so in any given situation, what you think you look like is going to be the thing that is kind of wandering around in here. The dark side of that situation is that Neo is actually lying in a chair with something fucking stabbed into the back of his neck, wearing a tatty jumper, looking emaciated. He's in a state of some discomfort. These are the bits that we don't see about ourselves. These are the bits of the shadow. The Chariot card comes to me to speak of the shadow because in the first instance it is a card of knowledge of thyself, and in order to be knowledgeable of thyself you have to be able to see the bits of you that do not fit with your residual self-image, if I can put it that way. The bits of you that are tatty and emaciated and sitting somewhere in a point of at a point of real discomfort, because it is only in the balance and the alignment between those two things that you can truly know yourself. And so if we can come up with real world examples, it is making excuses for people's behaviour, like choosing to avert your gaze from that. What this means for you at the core is like, why is it that you are willing to put yourself through a situation where you do not see this, where you're deliberately kind of blinkering yourself to it? What is it that is speaking to your shadow? What is the view you hold of yourself, and how is that being reflected back to you in your major relationships? Because with all the lovely bedroom cushions and the tapestries and the rugs everywhere, what you've had reflected back to you is something that you found to be acceptable. When you start pulling all of those away to look at what is sitting underneath it, there is a situation that says, for whatever reason, you are content to allow people to treat you that way, and you will fill in the gaps where affection and love and all those sorts of things should be, compassion, understanding, empathy, and you'll cover them up. You will do the work of covering that up. Because on some sort of level you don't feel like you deserve to be treated any differently. And as the conscious mind, has nothing to do with this at all, so the subconscious mind can keep piling tapestry after tapestry, cushion after cushion after cushion. It's like they're being yanked upside down. It's like stubbing your toe on something that you forgot was there, and you're kind of looking at it, and there's this vague recognition, but we're not quite sure where to put. What is that? What does this mean? Like, there's something dinging away in my memory here, but I don't know what it is. And as you're bending down to have a look and you're moving all of the things out of the way, you're like, fuck. It's a really gnarly, jagged stone here, and it's really fucking hard. And I've got a vague, dim recollection that maybe over here, somewhere slightly to the left, there's another one. And then you look around and you're like, this is why I put all of the things down here. This is why I covered it all up. Because I kept catching myself on that and it really hurt. This was the solution to my problem. I'm in a cave. I might as well make the best of it. Can I make it really pretty? But as you're sitting here looking at those things, there's a series of other thoughts that are occurring to you. And the thoughts are, why do I live in a cave? Why did I decide that this was a good place for me to be? I know that other places of habitation exist. Some people live in flats, and some people live in houses out in the country. Some people live in like cool log cabins in the woods. Why did I think that this was where I was supposed to be? And it's the series of answers that come from this series of questions that feel a little bit uncomfortable, because there's a certain set of premises that had to have applied at the point where you decided to move into this cave that you can't see any other way around. Oh, I'm in this cave and I'm isolated. Why did I want to do that? I know that there are people out there who are loving and giving and kind and having wonderful relationships, and people choose to live amongst that. But I'm here in the cave. Why is that? Can you see how this is going to go, Libra? Now, it's interesting. I felt like we were at I thought we were at the point where we needed another deck. The issue isn't why there are rugs and tapestries and cushions everywhere. That's a starting point. The issue isn't why are you living in the cave in the first place. The issue for you this month is getting down to the baseline assumptions that now you can see are the only reason why you would have considered these to be reasonable courses of action, and what it says about the mindset that created them. And I think you're deeply uncomfortable with what you see. The Ace of Swords is the truth, but I always think in the Night Sun Tarot it's really interesting that there's that crown of thorns around the top of it. There is this idea that, yeah, you're going to know the truth, but the truth is going to make you bleed. It's going to be scratchy, it's going to be uncomfortable, and we're not going to like wearing it like a crown of thorns on our fucking head. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, and all that, but you shall know the truth, and first, before you are set free, the truth will piss you off. And we could look around for people to blame, right? We could say, well, like, why the fuck are you treating me like crap? Why is that? Might be a fair question. But the deeper question, and the one that I don't think that you can get away from, whichever way you turn this month, is why have I put myself in a place where this is consistently what I receive? What does it say about me and what I think I deserve? Just musing on the Aries reading. I can't really remember what I said in the Aries reading, to be honest, but I know it had a lot to do with boundaries. And the surprising realisation for a lot of Aries that they haven't had boundaries because they haven't really known what boundaries were. They've had a series of walls and then sometimes completely open spaces. And there's a lack of understanding about where other people's boundaries lie too, and the fact that people have boundaries at all. And the realisation that there's been an inherent confusion on what it is to be the I am because they don't know. And it's interesting how you sitting at the other end of the axis is having a similar kind of experience here. But rather than the focusing on the boundaries, it seems to be pushing into the idea of self-worth. And the realisation, the quite horrifying realisation that it's considerably lower than you thought it was. Must be. It's the only thing that makes any sense about your hypothesis as to why you would have put up with things the way that you have for the longest time. You know, the Empress in the upright in the first instant, and then the Empress in reverse, you know, is the subconscious application of the Venusian energy that you now perceive you have been expressing versus what you're going to have to do to test your hypothesis, which is to stop that. And it's so fascinating that Venus should literally be retrograding. It's like I said, it's in shadow period now, but it's 2 days hence from here, it's going to be retrograde. And I don't think there's just one relationship that you're going over, because you know the one is a starting point, but it's like flicking over a domino. You can't help but going over all of your other relationships too. Relationships actually that you thought that you were kind of settled and peaceful with, even though they may have gone, you know, long in the past. And realizing that there's this consistent pattern that you see playing out through all of them. And I think for the overwhelming majority of you, it's the realization that all of the energy that is put into every major relationship that you have has come from you. And there might be all sorts of conscious justifications that you've used for why it seems that somebody else isn't quite as invested as you are. Maybe they're busy. They've got things to do, you know? You know what that's like. You're busy. You're a busy sign. Even when you look like you're not doing anything and you're not moving around, you know, that mind is whirring furiously all the time. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for something that is an outlier in the hypothesis that you're coming to. And I think the problem is that you can't find one, Libra. All the energy comes from you. All the balance comes from you. all the compromise comes from you. You know, if we can take this this metaphor of the cave and all the things that we're talking about with that, what you're starting to realise is you've made yourself a padded cell, I think. Rather than a true understanding of safety, of security, emotional and, you know, and anything else, which couldn't be experienced in the space that you were in, rather than going, I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm going to create that for myself because I deserve it. You've gone, I don't deserve it. Everybody is entitled to be as self-interested as they are. Like it's only right that I am the one making all of the fucking adjustments and compromises here. But just to make sure that I'm not, you know, constantly bleeding out, I'm just going to pad things up a little bit. Bit of padding over there, tapestry over there, some cushions down here. What I'm being shown now is like the centre point of a seesaw. And I think that you've been looking at all of your relationships from, you know, I want to give you a visual here so you can see what I'm looking at, right? Let's use this. So I've got my little stick of selenite and then there's the pencil, right? There's going to be a point, I don't know if I can find it because the selenite's not actually as straight as it looks. There's going to be a point where this pencil will balance perfectly. Let's go with there, right? It's not quite balanced perfectly, but both ends are up off the floor, off the table. What you're realizing is that your perspective has literally been this 1 centimeter here in the middle. And you've assumed, you've extrapolated from that there's an equilibrium here, right? Might be a little bit off center, but there's at least an equilibrium. Now I just want to show you that the pencil is definitely not touched it there, right? What's happening in this process this month is that you're widening your perspective. You're widening the scope of inquiry, if you will. And what you're seeing is that not only is this seesaw, this not nearly as well balanced as you think it is, but that you've only been looking at the fulcrum in the centre, and you have been assuming that the fulcrum in the centre shows that everything is balanced. But I think what you're going to find is it's looking a lot more like that. The scales are weighed totally in somebody else's favour here. And maybe not just one person, maybe many, many people. Because your need for harmony and balance above all other things has led you to a place where you've had to keep restricting your view and contracting and contracting and contracting until the place where you found the balance. And there it is. And then you've been content to kind of move around here and go, this is brilliant, I'm living a fulfilled life and this is all really cool. And stubbing your toe this month has made you actually step back and look up. And you're like, what the fuck is this? That's not a picture of perfect balance. This is not what I thought it was. And you know that nothing's moved. The only thing that's happened is you've taken a step back. The fulcrum isn't in the centre. The weight is not evenly distributed. There's a heaviness at one side. and it's all yours. So we get to the cards. I actually don't feel like I'm going to need to pull any clarifiers for this. I really do feel like this is very, very simple. And I know what I'm doing when I use that word. What we should not do is mistake that in any way for easy, because it isn't. It's extremely challenging and extremely intense for the entire month. But it is simple. And what is simple is the realization that you have not seen for things for how they actually are. You have made excuses for it. You've padded things out where you needed to stop yourself being lacerated and absolutely cut to ribbons by the environment that you've been in. But you've stayed here. Now I realise that a lot of the energies here that I'm talking about, the things that we're kind of rolling around here in this reading, are so intense that they can make you feel claustrophobic. It can feel like you're being punished in some way by the universe, and that's not what this is, Libra. What it is actually is a subtle nudge from the universe. Not so fucking subtle. There was a lot of major arcana energy on the table. It was a kind of big push to start seeing things in the way that you thought you were seeing them, but actually start seeing them, because what the universe wants you to do is stop putting yourself in a place where you're having to pad out the walls of your cell to stop yourself from losing your integrity. I mean, your bodily integrity, with all the cuts and the lacerations and all this kind of thing. It's like, well, here's a massive coping mechanism. Then over time you've forgotten why you put that in place. You've made yourself uncomfortable in a place that is truly deeply uncomfortable. And the universe is saying, Libra, it can be so much better. But in order to go there, you are going to have to first know yourself, and you are going to have to reassess the value of those things that you have thought were absolutely immovable. Those things that were static pillars of the construction of the universe as far as you were concerned. Absolute facts. Because there's new information that's come to light. And it is new information about the way that you manage your emotions. The concessions that you allow to other people that you do not allow to yourself. You know, if there's one thing that we can say that we can take comfort from, at least, in the realizations that you're having this month, is that there is a spark of preservation that exists within you, sufficient that you would seek to pad this out a little bit. You know, this is not wanton self-flagellation that you've been going through all of this time. Not overt, at least. But there's been a certain covert aspect to it. And what you are looking to do here is get things to the point where things are actually balanced. It's a deeply uncomfortable growth curve for you. Challenging the notions of what it is that you thought made you happy. Challenging the notion that your emotions are as balanced as you think they are, because sometimes when you realise what is within and what it is that's actually kind of screaming out into the void there, it can be shocking, it can be really fucking jarring. Like just this week for me, my things that I did not think that I had a problem with at all have been triggered so fucking hard. I've been having nightmares. I just had a visitation as well, which was interesting. From a big old black cat. I woke up and it was sitting on the bed looking at me, and then it wasn't a normal cat. I own a cat. Definitely wasn't my cat. Because my cat's not 2 feet tall. And she's kind of soft and fluffy around the edges. You know, there are angles under there, but she's very soft and she's fluffy. This cat was stark and black, dense, and like, I don't know. For me, at least, there's a certain quality that these kind of visitations take on, and it's not something that you can mistake for a normal cat. Plus, I don't own a 2-foot cat, right? That's 2 feet tall when it's sitting up straight. This week, I have had to challenge a lot of baseline assumptions about who I am. Actually, fundamentally, called like the way that I define myself, the way that I understand how I work out there in the universe, you know, what it is that I do, the underlying motivation for what it is that I do. Interestingly enough, my Pluto is in Libra and my Mars is also in Libra. And I do feel like it's the Mars here that's getting activated. You know, this, quite aside from the fact that the South Node is now sitting in your sign, the fact that the North Node obviously correspondingly is also sitting in a cardinal sign, means everybody's going to fucking feel, the cardinal signs are going to be feeling this. And what is your job? As a cardinal sign, you're pointing in the direction of travel. This is where we go. You are initiating. This feels to me like a spiritual awakening. And it feels to me of a nature of a spiritual awakening that often isn't fucking spoken about, particularly not on YouTube and places like that, where like, I had my spiritual awakening in 2013 and then I started going to yoga and I was all live, laugh, love and the rest of it for fucking time. And as soon as I hear that shit, I turn it off. Because I know it's not true. There's probably fragments of truth in it, but it's not true, TM, with a capital T. It is not the truth. You know, maybe the facts of what they just said were true. But I guarantee that they didn't have a spiritual awakening and then suddenly realise that everything was fucking blissful and unicorns and rainbows and all that sort of thing. Our ego has us permanently pointing towards us being the hero in our story. We are the protagonist. We're brave, you know. We make mistakes occasionally, but it's okay. We don't think about those too much because the intent was good, right? So we can just look past those. It's okay for us to assume that we are embodying those heroic themes that you would expect from the protagonist of any story. And in my understanding and the way that I have experienced spiritual awakenings, it's about something big, black and fucking horrible coming from the darkness, so you don't see it coming. It's just inky blackness, and then all of a sudden it has you by the throat. And what it represents is a part of ourselves that we do not want to fucking look at all. It's something that acts as the, if not the villain in the story, then at least the antithesis of the heroicism that we think that we have, where everything is just beautiful and comfortable and nice. And Libra, like that is the dark side of you. That you will attempt to make yourself comfortable wherever, when actually when you take a step back and you realise how imbalanced things are, you've got no business making yourself comfortable there. You have no business accepting this from people. Not if you truly valued yourself. And that can be a horrible thing to come to terms with, because it means that you have been punishing you over and over and over again every single fucking day of your life that you have lived, that you've had any kind of autonomy over at all. You've been doing anything other than look at the problem. And the problem is you. Now this makes it sound like I'm fucking beating you here and being all like, I'm not doing that. What I'm doing is I'm saying every single person on earth has this aspect, and it shows up differently in different people, but it's always there. It's always sitting in the background. And right in the centre of all of that is a positive intent. It's some sort of desire to make things better for you or for other people. Honestly, because you're Libra, I think it's been about making things better for other people. It's actually been about the act of making other people comfortable. You've been making excuses for people's behaviour. You've been explaining away your own discomfort for years and years and years. Because the harmony was the more important thing. We at least need to have the illusion of harmony here. Right? And maybe that was the positive intent, that's where it started. Maybe if I do this, eventually these people will grow up and they will change and they will see the value in me, and then I won't have to worry about that too much. It hasn't. It's just got increasingly uncomfortable. And you've made yourself comfortable within that discomfort to the extent now that you don't perceive the discomfort anymore, not on a conscious level. The Eight of Pentacles in reverse can be about not putting the work in. Maybe you're realising where you haven't put the work into yourself, and it's now starting to show. It's just been illuminated in glorious technicolor, and you're like, oh fuck, really? It might be about withdrawing the amount of effort that you're putting into something. Let's test this fucking hypothesis. If this is true, and it might not be true, let's have a look. Let's see what happens. If I just energetically step back just a little bit, what do I see? Could speak to that. But I feel for you, like, which one of those applies? This one definitely applies. It's about realising that you're having to unpick some of the things that you thought you were a master at. Because suddenly they don't feel like they're as concrete, as immovable as they were before. The value is now coming into question in a way that they did not before. Your value and the perception of your own value is now coming into question. Because where are the things that you've experienced a reflection of what you're about?. What's it showing you about yourself? We've got the Four of Wands. We've got the construction of a new foundation. All of these instabilities that are coming in, and the pressure and the intensity and everything, it's to make it all crack. It's to make it all fall down. It's to show you where you have not centered yourself properly. Like you've been, like I said, you've been hyper-focusing on the fulcrum point between the things. You haven't actually even perceived the extent of the seesaw, much less that it's all over this side. But it's doing this so that you have an opportunity to actually put it where it should be. I mean, for some of you, it might actually literally speak to where it is that you live. Why do you live where you do? What were the subconscious decision-making processes that led you to be there or led you to stay there? This is all about uncovering. We're stripping everything back to the walls and we're looking at it. And here's an interesting thing with this Ten of Pentacles. I think you're having to go back and look again at your core principles, your core values, and rather uncomfortably come to a realization that you have not been living in accordance with those. That the version of it that you've been employing has been, oh, it's going to sound a little bit brutal, and I don't mean it to be, but like a little shallow, because it's had to be, because there's so much fucking pain sitting underneath there. Like the Princess and the Pea, you've had to like stack 100 mattresses on the top of it. It's really interesting. When I read that story, I was really sad that I clearly couldn't be a princess. Because even at the age of fucking, I think I was about, well, I was reading from the age of 2, right? So I definitely have read something by the time I was 6 or 7 of the story of the Princess of the Pea. I could not believe that someone would be so fucking ill-mannered, so rude. My mother was a Taurus, though, so you don't express opinions that would... If it's a damaged Taurus, you don't express opinions that might in some way suggest that they are anything other than perfect. That was my experience, certainly in childhood anyway. I was just confused by that story. Because we're led to believe that princesses are good. Right? They're an inherently good force in the fairy tale universe. That's why they always need rescuing, right? They're the representations of innocence, purity, and all that kind of thing. Everything that is good in the world. But then in her hour of need, somebody gives her their hospitality, and she moans and she fucking bitches about it. And I was like, how can princesses be good if that's what they do? Where does this entitlement come from? Because that doesn't strike me to be a very good character trait at all. Where's the gratitude for the fact that they have been offered the hospitality? Yeah, I'll go off on a whole fucking thing about that. It's the realisation that the dark side of you has just been piling mattress upon mattress upon mattress down here, and what you haven't done is address the entitled princess. Whoever the entitled princess is in your story, and I do think that there is one, you seem to have come from the perspective that whatever the princess does is inherently good. When you, as some oik who lives in the woods, who has been blessed enough to receive the presence of a princess into your life, must now, they weren't oiks that live in the woods, was it? It was minor noblemen, right? You need to go and drag mattresses from all over your fucking house. You and tap up people in the village, because the comfort of the princess is somehow being compromised by your less than perfect facilities. Oh no, the whole point of the P was that it was to test whether she was a real princess or not. That's it. Getting fucking confused with my own story. But it's a familiar enough fairy tale that you can see where I am going with this. You're dragging mattresses from here, there and everywhere to support someone who is inherently entitled, inherently a fucking narcissist. I don't feel like that's an overstatement, because it does feel to me that there is one significant relationship in your environment that has a distinctly entitled princess feeling about it. And you've been piling mattress over mattress over mattress over mattress to make this person comfortable. And now you're thinking about it. It's like, well, of course, it didn't occur to me to do anything else. Why would I do it? Here is a princess. Here is somebody whose inherent value is more than mine. Then it's starting this cascade, it's starting this chain reaction, where you're looking back over every major relationship that you've ever had and you see the pattern. There's something forming here, and it's uncomfortable. Entitled princesses will exist and will always exist. But they will begin to fade away if they don't have people kowtowing to their fucking every fucking desire. As uncomfortable as it is, there is a period of there's a period of metamorphosis here, but it's actually a period of realizing how fucking uncomfortable you have been, which then correspondingly gives you the opportunity to fix it. And we see it down here. We see metamorphosis, we see transition, we see complete transformation. Then it's down to this. Do you remember I said that we went from the truth of something to acceptance? Here's where we realise where the issue has been. You know, the wider question of how these people have come into our lives, how there has been this repetition of a cycle that's been going on and on and on and on, has come because we have been at war with ourselves for the longest fucking time. Saturn in Leo is about the struggle. It's about our personal struggle. It's the war that has been raging between the different sides of ourselves for ever. That card showing up inverted is a move from war to peace. Because if you understand that the way that you relate to yourself and the way that you see yourself, the standard that you set for the rest of the world, which is the way that you treat yourself, has been so fucking low that you couldn't have done anything but invite the presence of these entitled little princesses into your life. And it's time for that to change. If you show the world how you wish to be treated, if you set the standard, and you got what you put out there, then the only way that that shifts is by shifting the way that you see yourself. And however shadowy and dark and black what it is that you have been and will be feeling this month, you have to love it. Because it's part of you. It's a part of you that wants to come in from the cold. It wants to be incorporated into you. And it might be black and it might be sticky and it might be like, like something like fucking Venom from the Superman films. Is it Superman? Spider-Man. Oof, okay. And we're getting into trouble with the Marvel people there. It might look like that. But it's a part of you. And it's a part of you that came into being with the most positive of intents. And that was so that you didn't rock the boat. You didn't rock other people's boats. It wants to come in from the cold. You want to come in from the cold, Libra. You have to stop making yourself as comfortable as you possibly can out in the cold. You need to bring yourself in and warm yourself by the fire, and you need to listen to what you have to say. Have you had massive fucking abandonment issues that have meant that whatever somebody else needed, that is what you are going to provide? Where did those abandonment issues come from? Where were your needs not met? Where were you taught that your needs wouldn't get met? And then how have you carried that forward into your adult life? The High Priestess is a card of acceptance. But she's accepting things, so she's opening right up to them. She's ruled by the moon. It's a Pisces card for me. She's ruled by the moon. It's about the internal subjective experience of being you. And however much you need to cast an objective eye over that, and I really do think your objective eye needs to be cast over this month, it's about coming to a place of peace and acceptance and openness to whatever it is that comes through and comes up for you. Because we don't eradicate these things by pretending that they do not exist. They just sit in a corner and they fester and they become resentful and bitter, and you know, we have kind of reactions to things that we can't really explain, and then we feel bad about it and we're like, God, I'm such a terrible person, just stop thinking about that. At every point along the way, a part of you that feels abandoned is trying to knock on your head and say, yo, can I come in yet? And the longer it's left out there to fester, the longer it's left out there to be cold, to be isolated, to be unseen specifically, the bigger, the darker, the denser it gets. You need to open up the door and allow it to come in. You need to put the lights on, the lights of your consciousness, and you need to come warm this little creature up by the fire. So that puts me in mind of back in 2012, I got a kitten, my Eli. It's a wonderful cat, and I loved him, but he was a little bit mental for the first few weeks that I got him. Just fucking destroying carpet and all sorts of things, and I was like, ah. And I had also noticed that my husband at the time was actually quite fond of the cat as well, but it was kind of like, oh, it's your cat, it's not my cat. And I just knew that like what he wanted was a cat. And I saw an advert for a 12-week-old cat, which would have made it the same age as Eli was. That somebody had got this kitten, and their cat was bullying the shit out of it, which is actually just what happens when you get a new kitten, right? And they adjust and whatever. But for whatever reason, she decided that she would just rehome the kitten. It was just easier. So, alright, fair. And I went and got it. And it's a beautiful, beautiful black cat. And some of you might have seen pictures of him, because like he lived with me until the day that he died, interestingly enough. But he was my husband's kitten. And he came home from work and I went, I've got a surprise for you. And here was the cat that he named Jax. I loved that cat. But after we'd had him for about a fortnight, he disappeared one day. And I looked for him everywhere. I couldn't find him. We were looked out on the road. Had he been run over? Was he under a bush somewhere? You know, like what had I? He just vanished. He disappeared into thin air. And it got to the point where we'd pretty much given up hope of seeing him again. I think about 10 days had passed and I was like, well, wherever he is, I hope he's just found himself a new home, because if he's out there somewhere, maybe he got lost or something, we couldn't find him. It's better that he's got a new home, that he's come to some sort of unfortunate end. But we didn't know. And in the house that we lived in at the time, it was funny, it was kind of on a slope, and then the main road came down on a different slope like this, so it was kind of built up off the road, which made it look like a huge imposing building, but it was a semi-detached. It was in the end of a terrace, right? And along the front, next to the front door, there were a couple of windows, and then it went along the side of the hallway like that. And it was really nice because you were actually kind of in an elevated position, because like the road sloped down like this, and then our house was like that, and it also went up a slope. So from at the front there, you got this really nice kind of open. There was always a lot of light in that hallway. It was really, really nice. And one night I'd been sat, I was doing uni work because I was doing my undergrad at the time, and the kids were in bed, and I can't even remember where my husband was, but he wasn't in the house. He must have been on his way back from work, right? So it had been about 7 o'clock at night. And I came out of the living room and I started to walk down the hallway, and I saw a pair of eyes and a mouth go at me, right? And it was pitch black outside. It was storm. We were having the most unbelievable rain. You know, so there was the noise of that kind of thrashing around, and wind was howling around as it often did. And there was this fucking demonic eyes and mouth. And I shit myself, as you would do immediately. And then, like, about 1 second later, I was like, that's a cat's face, holy shit. And I ran down the hallway, and I opened the big window up, and there, drenched and emaciated, is Jax. Interestingly, he never strayed far from the house after that. He was always within eyesight. So even if you couldn't see him, you just had to kind of walk around a little bit, and he'd be like, there he is, there he is, there he is. He never went more than 15 feet away from the house boundary. And we lived in several houses after that. In that first moment where I saw him, and he was so completely black and beautiful and whatnot, he actually looked, and he always looked like this, like he'd been just a hole cut out of the universe. There was just that dense black space. Against the wind and the rain and the darkness outside, I had no idea what that was. I saw eyes, I saw teeth, I had a very immediate reaction to it. But when I opened that window and let that in, it's a little cat. It's a little fucking, like 15, 16-week-old cat. And it's cold, and it's cross because it's been outside and been stuck somewhere. We think he must have got stuck in somebody's garage. And he's just been sat there waiting to be let out. And he made it back. But he was a homeboy after that. And so he always stayed where it was warm, near the fire, near the boundary of the house, where the people were, where he felt safe. He went from being some great big black expanse to just a little thing that needed a bit of attention and a bit of care and a bit of love. Wanted to feel safe. That's what this is, Libra. This bit of you may feel like it's something big and black and you can't see the edges of it, and all you can see is teeth and eyes, and it feels like a threat. It is a threat. It's a threat to your ego. If you can go and open the window and let it in, if you can take care of that, not only are you pulling back to yourself a bit of you that you shoved away a very long time ago, but it comes with qualities all of its own. That cat and I actually disliked each other for a long time. And when my husband and I broke up, he was supposed to take the cat with him. And in the end he went, no, I don't want the responsibility of looking after him. I can barely look after myself. I don't want the responsibility of a cat. And I looked at him and I was like, really? Are you fucking joking? You're a father of 3 and you can't deal with the responsibility of a cat? Well, that probably says everything. And I went, fine, right, well, I'll look after the cat. And the cat and I surprised each other, I think. There's a picture of him lying on me on my Instagram. I'd fallen asleep on the sofa one night, and he came and I was lying on my side, and he came and lay down my arm. It was a big cat. It's like a panther, very leggy, and he lay there. And I woke up 5 hours later and we were both in exactly the same position. And I'm like, how the fuck have you stayed on there all night? How have I not moved and accidentally like had you slide off or whatever? And I picked up my phone and I took a picture of him. And I think I said something along the lines of, I think I'm wirelessly charging the cat. And 1,000,001 people came back and went, no, cat's wirelessly charging you. And I was like, oh fuck. We kind of had to get to know each other away from somebody else being in the dynamic, my ex-husband being the person. We circled each other for a bit. We rolled our eyes at each other all the time, because I would do things that would piss him off, and then he would do things that quite literally fucking piss me off. He'd just like knocking things off the side. And if I didn't feed him quick enough, he'd just go around looking for things to destroy until I actually pulled the cat food out and fed him, you know? It was a kind of tolerating each other relationship for a long time. But it grew into something quite profound and quite beautiful. And when he finally did pass last year, I really did feel the loss, as did Silas, actually. The pair of us went and had a little funeral for him, and Silas understood exactly what was going on. As big and dark and dense and frightening as what you are experiencing feels like to you, Libra, in the centre of it all is a little cat who wants to be your companion. And you're going to have to work out how to incorporate this little companion into your story moving forwards. And that's not necessarily going to be something that just happens seamlessly. But over time, it's got something that it can give you that you have been missing forever. It's a part of yourself. This process changes everything. Eventually it will change everything, because it will change the kind of people that you spend time with. It will change the way that you show up in any relationship. It'll improve the value that you have about yourself, the way that you see yourself. It will also have people treating you differently. Because as you always have the ability to do, is setting the standard. You can pick the bar up and you can shift it to something that is actually beautiful. But you have to do it within yourself first. Alright, I've been waffling on for fucking ever. I feel like I've been here for days, holy shit. We just marched straight up to the shadow, and I feel like I'm just kind of emerging again. Right. I can't see properly. Right. You may not feel it about yourself, but know that I love you very, very much. And you will get there too. Take care, and I'll see you soon.